Snow falling, fire crackling. I thought it was just another lonely Christmas. But when Logan looked at me and whispered those words, everything cracked. I wasn't just his stepmother anymore. And I didn't know whether to run or stay. I never thought I'd be telling this story. Not to you, not to anyone, but it's been clawing at me. And maybe speaking it out loud will help me breathe again. It all started with a snowstorm. Not the kind you see in postcards, this one was cruel. Sudden, and completely unplanned. Logan and I were supposed to be in and out of the cabin in 2 days. Just a quiet winter retreat to revisit old memories. But then the storm hit. The roads iced over, and the signal vanished. And just like that, we were stuck. Logan, my late husband's son, was always the quiet type. Respectful, observant. We'd lived under the same roof for years, especially after his dad passed. I raised him like my own. But that weekend, he wasn't just my son anymore. There was a moment by the fire. His voice low, a sentence I didn't see coming. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about myself, about him, about us, shifted. I'm not proud of what happened next. But I can't erase it either. All I know is, the snow outside wasn't half as cold as what I felt inside, right before he said those words. After my husband died, I told myself I had to stay strong, for Logan, for the house, for the life we'd built. But truthfully, I wasn't strong. I was numb. Life became something I moved through, not something I felt. The house stayed clean. I showed up to work. I remembered to buy groceries and pay bills. I smiled at neighbors, but inside, I was hollow. Nights were the worst, when the silence wrapped around me so tightly it felt like I might disappear into it. Logan stayed. He had just turned 17 when his dad passed. His birth mother had left long before I ever came into the picture. And with no one else, I became everything. Legal guardian, emotional anchor, the one who packed lunches and helped with college forms and reminded him to breathe on the days he looked ready to break. We never talked about grief, not really. We just folded it into our routines like it was another chore. Some nights we'd eat dinner in silence, the clink of forks louder than words. Other nights he'd linger in the kitchen a little longer, like he wanted to say something, but never quite did. I told myself that was enough. That getting through the day without crying counted as healing. But it didn't. I didn't feel alive. I felt faded, like a photograph left in the sun too long. And I never realized how badly I needed to feel seen until Logan started looking at me like he really did. It started small. A glance held a second too long. The way he'd stand in the doorway of the kitchen, arms crossed, just watching me cook like he was studying something important. I chalked it up to lingering grief. Or maybe I was imagining things. But then he asked me something I wasn't expecting. "Do you remember the cabin, Marissa?" I turned around, surprised he used my name like that. Not Mom, not even hey, just Marissa. Soft and intentional. "The one in the mountains," he added, "where we used to go every Christmas." I nodded, cautiously. "Of course. Why?" He shrugged, but his eyes didn't match the nonchalance in his voice. "I thought maybe we could go. Just the two of us. For the weekend." The cabin hadn't been touched since before my husband passed. I'd left it behind like everything else. Too many memories woven into its wood-paneled walls. Too many ghosts. I hesitated. "Why now?" He looked away, then back. "Because it's still ours, and I think we could use the quiet." There was something in his tone, something gentle, almost protective. For a moment, I forgot he was just 19. He spoke like someone older. Someone who'd carried too much too early. I said yes. We packed light. He brought snacks and books. And I found the old thermos we used to fill with cocoa. The drive up was long and quiet. Snow had just started to fall, dusting the trees with a fresh white layer, like the forest was being reborn. As we neared the cabin, something shifted in the air. Logan leaned forward in his seat, eyes scanning the landscape like he was searching for a memory. When we pulled into the driveway, he whispered, "Still here." And for the first time in a long while, I felt something stir in me too. A flicker of warmth I thought I'd buried. Maybe we both needed this trip more than we realized. The first night at the cabin felt like stepping back into a memory. Everything was just as we'd left it, dusty board games on the shelf. The old plaid blanket draped over the couch. Firewood stacked neatly by the door. Even the silence felt familiar. Logan moved through the space with ease. Like he belonged there. He started a fire while I unpacked the food. We didn't talk much, but the quiet between us wasn't uncomfortable. It felt intentional, like we were letting the space breathe with us. Later, as the wind picked up outside, Logan poured 2 mugs of cocoa from the old thermos. He handed me mine without a word, then sat beside me on the floor in front of the fire. The snow started falling harder, fast and sideways. I glanced at my phone, no bars. Logan checked his too. Storms stronger than we thought. He murmured. I tried to stay calm, but something about being truly cut off made my chest tighten. Logan must have sensed it, because he nudged his shoulder gently against mine and said, "It's okay. We're good here. It's just snow." We stayed up for hours, talking about nothing and everything, college, music, how weird the world feels sometimes. And somewhere between his laughter and the firelight dancing on the walls, I started to forget the years between us. He looked at me differently that night. Not like a kid looks at a parent. Not even like a boy looks at a crush. It was something else, something steady, something real. And when he said, "I like it when you laugh like that," I couldn't help but smile. I should have looked away, but I didn't. The wind howled through the trees outside. But inside the cabin, the fire softened everything. The shadows danced gently along the wooden walls. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath. We sat close, our shoulders barely touching. Logan had draped the old plaid blanket across our legs, and the warmth it held wasn't just from the fire. He looked over at me, his eyes calm, steady. "You know," he said, voice low, "Dad used to say you were the strongest woman he ever met." The mention of his father caught me off guard. I blinked and stared at the flames. "He said that?" "All the time," Logan replied. "He said you made things feel possible, even when they weren't." I swallowed hard. I hadn't heard anyone speak about my husband like that in a long time. Then Logan shifted slightly, angling toward me. "I don't think you hear it enough. You're still that woman, Marissa." My name on his lips, it hit differently. Intimate, grounded. "You don't have to say that," I whispered. "But I want to." His voice softened further, and I meant it. He reached out slowly and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered a moment too long, brushing the edge of my jaw. My heart pounded. Everything in me screamed to move, to break the moment, to remember the line we'd never meant to cross. But I didn't pull away. I let the moment settle. I let the warmth soak through. And when he said, "If I had one wish right now, it'd be for you to finally see what I see," I forgot how to breathe. There was no kiss, no bold move, just his hand on mine, our fingers slowly intertwining. But it felt louder than anything either of us could have said. And I didn't stop it. We didn't speak for a while after that. The fire crackled beside us, the only sound between our tangled hands and the questions neither of us dared to ask out loud. I should have let go. I should have said something light, laughed it off, stood up and walked into another room. But I didn't. Logan didn't force anything. He just stayed there, still, present, his thumb brushing the back of my hand like he was memorizing it. And somehow, in the hush of that winter night, the world faded, the years between us blurred. There wasn't a title between us anymore, not stepmother, not son, just two people who had lost too much, too soon, and didn't know how to carry it anymore. I felt his blanket slide up over my shoulders. He'd taken it off himself and wrapped it around me wordlessly. "You're freezing," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, just unsteady." He smiled a little, not mocking, just understanding. "I get that." Then, softer, You don't have to keep being strong around me. That undid me. My breath hitched, and my throat tightened. No one had told me that in years. I'd been the pillar, the steady one, the functioning adult, and yet here he was, holding the weight I didn't know I'd been dragging. My eyes welled, and before I could stop myself, I leaned into his shoulder. He let me, no pressure, no move, just presence. I felt his chin rest lightly against the top of my head, his breath slow and steady, and for one surreal moment, I let myself believe this was okay, that this comfort didn't have to be wrong. But then the fire popped sharply, and it was like reality snapped back into focus. I pulled away just slightly, just enough to feel the shame creep in. I should go get ready for bed, I whispered. Logan didn't argue, he just nodded once. Good night, Marissa. And hearing my name like that again made it even harder to walk away. I barely slept. The wind outside had settled, but inside my head, a storm was still howling. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of his blanket, the warmth of his hand, the way he said my name like it meant something more. When the sun finally cracked through the blinds, I was already sitting up in bed, wrapped in guilt like a second skin. I told myself nothing happened. We didn't kiss, we didn't cross any hard lines. But it wasn't about the lines, was it? It was about the feeling. I heard him moving around in the kitchen, mugs clinking, footsteps soft. When I came out, Logan was pouring coffee like it was any other morning. He glanced up, his expression calm, maybe even a little unsure. Morning, he said softly. I forced a smile. Morning. He handed me a mug. Our fingers brushed. I flinched before I could stop myself. He noticed. Of course he did. But he didn't say anything. Just sat at the table and stared out the window, the steam from his cup curling up like smoke between us. We drank in silence, not heavy, not tense, just different. Something had changed, and we both knew it. And the worst part was, I didn't know if I regretted it. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Logan filled the silence with soft music, songs I didn't recognize, and neither of us spoke much beyond the necessary. I stared out the window most of the time, pretending to admire the snow-covered trees, pretending I wasn't unraveling. Every time his hand adjusted the gear shift, I tensed, not because he touched me, but because I remembered when he had, and I hated how badly I missed it. Back at the house, everything looked the same couch, same kitchen light flickering, same cold draft near the stairs. But we weren't the same. Something had shifted in that cabin, something we couldn't pack away with our bags. He carried my duffel inside like always, placed it by the door, didn't linger, didn't try to talk about it. And that should have made things easier, but it didn't. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding at every creak in the floorboards. I told myself it was just a phase, just a mother craving connection. Just a boy clinging to comfort. But that didn't explain the way he looked at me, or the way I'd let him. A few days later, I found a note in the laundry room, folded carefully, tucked between a clean stack of towels. I meant every word. That was it. No name, no explanation, just that. And my heart sank and soared all at once. I wasn't just haunted by what had happened. I was haunted by what hadn't. By the kiss we never shared. By the space between us that only seemed to grow louder. I wanted to forget it. I wanted to rewind time. But most of all, I wanted to hear him say my name like that again. I kept the note. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me needed proof that it wasn't all in my head. That what I felt wasn't one-sided or imagined. But that didn't make it easier. A week passed. Logan moved through the house like nothing had changed, polite, helpful, kind, too kind, like he was giving me space, waiting to see what I'd do with it. I tried to act normal. I cleaned the kitchen. I answered emails. I smiled when he handed me coffee. But every time our hands brushed, I flinched again, this time not from guilt, but from how much I wanted not to. Then one evening, I got a call from a friend of my late husband. She'd helped us renovate the cabin years ago. We chatted politely, until she said something that stopped my heart cold. "By the way, I think the security system's still active up there. One of the cameras pinged during the storm. Probably nothing, but figured I'd mention it." My blood went still. I forced a laugh. Something hollow. "Oh, yeah, probably just the motion sensor. We were stuck up there for a night." She said nothing for a beat. Then, "Just you two?" I mumbled something and hung up as quickly as I could. The air around me shifted, heavier, tighter. What if there was footage? What had it seen? Nothing happened, and yet. It didn't matter. Because now it wasn't just my secret. It was a question floating in someone else's mind, a suspicion I couldn't control. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about guilt. It was about risk. I haven't spoken to Logan about the cabin, or the camera, or the silence between us that now says more than words ever could. He still looks at me the same way, steady, calm, like he's waiting for me to admit what we both felt. I keep telling myself it wasn't wrong, that nothing happened, that warmth isn't a crime. But if it wasn't wrong, why can't I sleep at night? Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I replay that night on a loop. The firelight, his voice, my breath catching when he touched my hand. It wasn't physical, but it was real, too real. And here's the truth I've never said out loud. Part of me wanted him to kiss me. Not out of lust, not out of confusion, but because, for the first time in years, I felt seen, held, wanted. And that scared me more than anything. I don't know what I am to him anymore. I don't know what I am to myself. So tell me honestly. If you were a widow, alone in the cold, and someone looked at you like you were still worth loving, would you have pulled away? Or would you have stayed?